I do about this film. It's very, very special. I'd love to hear how each of you was approached by Alexander Payne and what sort of his pitch was to you. Obviously, Paul, you have a long-standing relationship with him, so I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to do other things over the years. What happened over there?
I dropped my water bottle, I'm sorry.
That's right. Things didn't happen, things didn't work out. And then he sent me a rough draft of this thing. He said, I have a thing I think you might like that I have you in mind for a while ago. It was a long time ago, several years ago. And we just couldn't get the schedule worked out. And then finally it did. It was just that, and nothing more elaborate than that.
He said he wrote it for you. Does he tell you that when he brings it to you?
He did tell me that, but yes, which I found interesting once I read the character. I found that very curious that this was a character written for me. I couldn't figure out why on earth this was supposed to be written for me. But it was, I think, I don't really know what he means by, I do know what he means by that, because I think he thought he was drawing on a lot of stuff from my background. I went to a place like this, I grew up around folks like this, academics that smell like fish. And, it was just, I think he thought you have a relationship to this kind of thing already, and I think it was that kind of thing, yeah.
David, please tell me about how you were first approached by him.
I got a call from Alexander, and he described his character to me. And I was like, well, she sounds great. And he was like, no, I think you could be great as this character. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And so he gave me the script, I read it, I liked it, we talked about it a little bit more. I wish I had a more eventful, and then, it wasn't. No, but I will say this, I was very humbled and honored the fact that I think what he did relate to me was that in him seeing Dolomite, that there was something about that character, me working with Eddie Murphy, that he felt connected to in some way and thought she might have, the stuff needed to do this role, which I think it says a lot about him and his skill. Because I do think, and I don't know if we talk about this enough, I think he has a great skill in selecting
super good
cast members, and I think that's why you guys love his movies so much, because this chemistry is real, and you guys, this is sad, right? So you guys know, right? Let's be honest. You'll work with people and you don't like them. And in this situation, we actually like each other. And so I think there was something with the chemistry that I think he just has an innate gift with. So yeah, he approached me, he thought, I think based off of that, he thought it could be a good idea, and we were off to the races from there. This guy has the amazing stuff. We got the boring stuff. This guy.
This is Dominic's feature film debut. What an incredible. There were many auditions to get this, from what I've heard.
Oh yes, it was a battle and war-torn experience. But well, there was no pitch for me. Obviously, I was kind of stumbled upon. But yeah, I sent in my initial audition, I guess, through the casting people. Susan Shotmaker is a casting director. She came to Deerfield to meet some of the students there, myself included.
Did you see a flyer in the dining hall or something?
No. Well, initially my head of school told us, he taught at a school called St. Andrews in Delaware, I think, and that's where they filmed Dead Poets Society. He was telling us about that experience, and I was like, that's really cool, having a movie filmed at your school. And then he mentioned that these people were looking at Deerfield, and the casting people were coming as well. So that's how I heard about it, but I didn't really know anything about this lead role, this lead character. They were kind of just talking about background kids mainly, and I thought, maybe I can sit at the desk in the classroom or something. That would be a win, But yeah, so I sent in that tape through Susan, and a few weeks later, Alexander came to do it. Alexander Payne, nice to meet you. I really enjoyed your tapes, and that was kind of all he said to me the whole time. And it was just, yeah, maybe 7 or 8 auditions. And finally got to meet Paul, because I knew that he was attached to this, and I got to read with him a little bit. And then finally got to meet Divine when I was officially part of the crew, and hit the ground running there.
Well, I'll say this just really quick. When Alexander and I were talking about it, he told me then that he said there's 2 guys, and he was like, one, you know, an actor who's been in the industry, it'll work. He's like, but there's this other kid, and he's really quite special. He goes, it would be his first time, and I'm really leaning towards him, but I don't know. And I was like, follow your gut.
Yeah, he showed me his tape, and he did the scenes, he did them great, but then there was also just you sitting talking into the camera, and I was like, oh, look at that kid's face, man. I was like, what an amazing, this kid is unbelievable.
Yeah, truly.
So I was like, this is where you should do this.
Yeah.
It also felt like, you know, he's making a 70s movie. I was like, do the 70s thing and go with the person who's unknown. Just take the risk.
So I want to dive into preparing to play these roles. What type of rehearsals did the 2 of you have to do together? How does Alexander sort of set you up to succeed with these sorts of performances?
You get together and you rehearse for about 2 weeks, you know? I mean, it's
like table reads, text analysis.
Just sitting and reading it, you know? And if you want to play with the words and stuff, you can do it then, and you'll put it in there, you know? But it's mostly kind of hanging out, is what it is, you know? Like 2 weeks, something like that.
Was that 2-3 weeks? Yeah.
And the 2 of them, for me personally, just like did a great job of making themselves available. Like they didn't, neither of them. As soon as we started, it's not like they disappeared when we were done doing a scene. You know.
I'll make my trailer, Tom.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like I'll talk to you. Like, but no, like both of them, the whole time were available for me to talk to and ask questions, and especially Paul in particular was cool just because, like you said, he went to a school. Not that early, but sort of closer to that time. So it was cool to, especially being in a lot of those places, to talk to him about that stuff.
Well, tell me a little bit about that. What were you able to pull from your own history into this character?
Well, you know, a lot. I did go to a school like this, and only about 10, 11 years after this takes place. So a lot of those men, and all men, were still at that place, and they were 10 years more bitter than that. So it's like, you know, they're intense, and it was a real type, and they played a type. You know what I mean? They play the role of the hard ass like that. It's their thing. You know, it's this idea of being this rigorous British schoolmaster kind of thing. And so I had guys like this, for sure. One guy in particular was very much this kind of pasty little comb-over of a man with mustache and smelled like an ashtray, you know, and was kind of a mean guy, but was a good teacher. And Alexander makes this really great distinction between niceness and kindness. And that this guy isn't necessarily nice, but he is kind. And it was true of a lot of these teachers. You know, I remember those guys very well, got a good education from them. But they're rough places. I don't think they're the same anymore. But yeah.
David, tell me about your own research. We've talked before, but tell me, how did you build the character for yourself?
In general, when I create characters, a lot of times I like to take from my own life, as well as I like to take of actresses or historical figures and try to like subliminally implant them in for you guys to figure it out and for your enjoyment. But no, yeah, so a lot of like, my mom is in there. My grandma, the glasses are my grandmother, not my grandmother's glasses, but I was like, this is my grandmother's glasses, props, can we make it happen? And like I will say this, location and props department, as I hope you can see, was bar none. I mean, you open up a drawer, you open up a drawer that no one saw but us, filled with stuff. And I think that's another like Alex thing in which he helps and prepares. You were saying like how did he prepare us? We just had, it's like we would walk into a room and it'd be sensory overload of smells, of textures, of props. We filmed natural light in actual cold. The snow was real. No sets. You know what I mean? So it was very viscerally
do
there.
things too. Like he'll be like, "What do you think the guy would have on the set? What do you want on the set?" I was like, crappy paperback mystery novels, because that's the guy's like vice. Is that he reads crappy paperback? So there's a ton of them, but you never see them.
But it's there for us.
They're there. Yeah.
Even with wardrobe and costumes, the detail, and like I wanted you to want to like reach out and touch her or like give her a hug. So like textures and warmth and coziness. I was just basically playing on your emotions and trying to make it work to my advantage. But no, really, of like, you know, trying to have a connection. And then in regards to the grief stuff, I mean, unfortunately, everyone in this room has dealt with grief and loss. And so what I tried to do specifically was, I knew I didn't want to have just one note of like sad, depression. Because also I don't think you guys would want to be around me at all. Like that would be horrible to just be moping about all day on set. And so like I did the opposite. I would be like chipper and giggly and jokes and like whatever. So that when the time was ready to do that, I had a reservoir to give that, if that makes sense. But yeah, in regards to the grief, for me, I wanted to chart all the stages of grief from start to finish. Because I thought about the viewer that would watch it, if someone was going through loss or something like that it wouldn't be like, well, I can't identify with this because she just showed, I don't know, denial. Do you know what I mean? So I wanted it to be something that people could watch and at some part in the movie identify with her and connect with her. So.
Yeah, I mean, these characters are so incredibly layered. I think that's what makes them so special, the way you all are able to deliver that. Dominic, you know, as the newbie here, and I know Alexander Payne is such a cinephile. Did he give you homework? Did you have to study 70s films? What was sort of your prep?
I mean, he didn't give me any work or like a playbook or anything, but I mean, I think all three of these people were always constantly dropping little seeds for me, and I think it was just on me to really take that and run with it and sort of, I don't know, it's like in college, like this past year in college, it was like, you know, when you're in class, you kind of have to give yourself that confidence to take things that stick and walk away with those things that don't really. So I think I just made sure I was going in as a good listener and always listening to what he was saying, listening to what Divine and Paul were saying, and if there was something that I found really interesting or intriguing or helpful, those are the things that I would stick to. But I think Alexander in particular is always talking about old movies, and he's like a walking film school, so there was a lot of things he would just kind of mention like, flippantly. I mean, not even directed towards me, because I don't even think he would say them to me, because he knows they would go over my head. But just talking to other people on set, and I could pick up on those references and study those a little bit. Yeah.
And an interesting connection that Giovanni pointed out to me is you all both went to Yale School of Drama, years apart, but you mentioned that it sort of creates a common language on set. Can you two talk?
I said that, Paul, I don't know, because when we were in London, I said this in an interview in London, he was like, yeah, I don't know. And I was like, wow, I've been saying this.
I think the more important thing is it's like a boot camp experience. We shared the experience of going through that place. We had different instruction, and somehow I think it was more just we naturally understood each other anyway. You know what I mean? It was like something about you just was familiar to me. I was like, I know how this person. No, it's like, wow, this person is amazing, and I just feel completely. We never talked about anything.
No,
And it's the kind of thing, I love that when you walk in, you have to talk about anything. You just start watching
Yeah.
the Newlywed Game and talk about anything. And it was
Yeah,
great. But
that was magic.
The experience of going to Yale, I think, made us on the same page in a way. We went through the similar experience of that.
The curriculum at the core,
Yeah.
I think, was this enough that like, okay, so right, it's like, if I go do a movie, let's say, and I hopefully am getting the opportunity to work with someone more established than me, right? Like a Paul, like a Eddie Murphy, like a Sandra Bullock. What I've been doing lately is that almost like, I've said this before, it's almost like that first week for me is almost like the first round of a boxing match, right? Where I'm just like, I'm observing like, okay, you move here, got it, you throw the punch there, your Achilles is this, you're not kind of like, gotcha, but you know what I mean, in the sense of, to get to understand them. Because I'm at where I'm at, and where I'm at on the call sheet, I'm not gonna sit there and be like, well, actually, Sandra Bullock, my process is X, Y, and Z. So I've learned, right? I've learned to try to bring something to the table for them, but also to see and meet them where they're at. So I think what I'm saying is, for the first time maybe ever, with Paul, and that's not even the first week, the first scene, I was like, wait, what? That I was like, I knew, not I knew the moves, but the second, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can just be here. Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying, there was no talking, no stuff like that, and because of it, it was really exciting because after that first week, I knew, wow, if this is the foundation of where we're starting, we just have so much depth that we can give to these characters and an ease to them, and that was just really exciting to me personally. I don't know about him, but it was very exciting. And to me, that it was special. You don't often get that, and if anything, it's more a negotiation. The whole process of filming, of like getting to know a person.
Waste a lot of time.
But I would say the same was even for Dominic.
Yes, I was just gonna say, I actually felt the same way about you too. I mean, it was.
I think it was interesting because this was prior to, I was a senior in high school, and after doing this, it was my first year in drama school, so it was really interesting sort of hearing that.
Just insane.
Yeah, there's that.
Like, I mean, they were talking about stuff that they did in school, like the clown stuff, if you remember that, and that was like something I was about to start in school this year, and I just thought that was cool thinking back.
Dom was shot at Deerfield Academy where Dom went to school, and you'd sleep in your own dorm room, and when we were done, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I walked my friends, because I had the privilege of sort of sharing a connected room with one of my best friends my senior year, and we had sort of like a big suite. So when I left to go do this movie for the whole winter, they turned my room into a kitchen and like made it into sort of like apartment for this kid. And they had a couch in there, and we were playing video games in my room. So I went in there when we were there, and I like grabbed some of my things. Make sure they weren't breaking anything. Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're like walking the hallway, and he's like, "This is my English class." I'm like, "Did you get an A? Show me your report."
Pictures of him in the school,
What did you
playing on the walls.
Devon actually researched a little bit of my school before we went, and I remember when we showed up, you were saying that we had an ice cream machine there.
Yeah,
and I was like,
cool.
what? You have an ice cream machine?
Yeah, I was like, "Where are we going? I need to know what the school is giving." And you guys had like a paint berry in your school. It was the coolest thing ever.
I wanted to talk specifically about the Christmas party scene. I think it's such an incredible moment in this movie, and you also kind of get to see the characters in a different light, in a different setting. Tell me about what that scene sort of meant to each of you.
Oh, I thought y'all were gonna stop talking about it. Yeah, I've been in situations before where, the director will be like, so you have this big moment in the script, and in 2 weeks we're gonna do it, and 5 days, it's like this amp up in a way, and I really didn't want to do that, and so, for me at that point, what would you say, we were like halfway, almost a third left?
Yeah.
We were deep in it at this point, so I'm feeling very comfortable with everyone. We're accustomed to everything. We've gotten out some other kind of tougher things at this point. And so I kind of just was like, whatever this needs to be is going to be. And that day in particular, I just tried to have as joyful of a day as possible. And I don't know, to be honest, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, there's not much written. I mean, of all the beautiful beautiful, beautiful details that David writes in this whole script. That is a moment where he does not say much at all. And I said it to say that it was kind of something that we all collectively figured out, okay, what is this that we want to make this, like, what do we want this to look like? And so we like got into the space and was trying to figure out, you know, what would feel good. Everyone was so kind to me and just like created a safe space for me. And Alex, you know, was like, well, do you think she's starting facing the camera? And I was like, no, I think my back's to them. And I remember I turned my back and he was like, you're a feral cat. And I was like, well, if that's what it needs to be, then that's what it needs to be. But no, I think we only did like maybe 2 or 3 takes. Yeah, and it kind of was just like, okay, I'm gonna release this on you guys, and go. And I remember we did the first take, and it was like a lot. I was on the ground. We were recreating like the piata. He's holding me. I'm like this, truly. And I was like, this is the one that's gonna go in the can. And it was like, it was still very real. I'm very proud of it. I hope you can see that uncut version. But I think now looking at it, because that's a real thing, right? Editing, that it was like, nope. And I remember we did it, and I think Alex was like, beautiful. Don't ever want to see that again. But in like the best way, you know what I mean? Like, that was deep. You really, whoa. And then he was like, let's try another way.
He's great like that.
It's not mean.
Like, yeah.
It's not mean. He really was like, I think the DP walked out and they were like, yeah, let's never. We got that one. Great. But one thing I did think was beautiful, in that moment, what we organically came up with was the idea that Angus actually is the only person that can be what she needs. It wasn't Paul's character, because if you notice, like, Paul is there, but he kind of keeps his distance a bit. The other guy tries, he's too touchy-feely. Like, it was he was the right one, and I thought that was quite beautiful and impactful. But I think that's an example where we as a collective really, I mean, it was quite amazing. And usually in those situations, you know, it's quote-unquote your moment, and so everyone's like, okay, well, do your thing. But I really felt so supported. And we came up with something that you guys now see. But yeah, you're gonna do 2 or 3 takes.
That whole sequence is cool. Alexander does parties really well. Kind of weird gatherings of people that expand out and are kind of these moments when people let down guards and get vulnerable and stuff. Yeah, it's funny. It's like, I remember thinking, it makes this guy angry that they put themselves in a position where they're also vulnerable, and it pisses me off at you. And it's just great that it's like he's so great at orchestrating these funny, weird things that suddenly things pop out. It's really great. It was awesome.
Yeah, that scene in particular, I just like how it's, like Devon was just saying, how there's no words really, just the way it's constructed and that, like, yeah, it's a party and it's a celebration on the outside, and the door closes and we're all kind of seeing each other, at least seeing Mary for the first time.
They're all revealing
so.
themselves to each other,
Like she was saying with Angus, my character, I think that was like a realization of like, other than your own son, I'm now like the closest person you've ever been to.
100%.
No other student at that school, other than your own son, has been this close to you.
Exactly.
You know?
The family thing really starts there too.
Yeah.
Bitching me out, like, stop yelling at the kid.
Yeah, or like right before, I love that scene with stop touching the brownies.
That stuff
just take
really
him to the
started.
damn party.
Yeah.
Now I'm fucking nervous. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just that family.
We're all gonna go do this shit together.
Yeah.
We're gonna go have a good time.
Exactly.
Everybody's gonna have a good time.
And we are anxiety-ridden, strung out. We should not be going to this party. And we all, but in a beautiful way, we all, in spite of ourselves, I guess, are telling ourselves, I'm doing it for Angus,
Yeah.
I'm doing it for Paul, and I don't want to be there, but I'm doing it for them.
Yeah.
And everyone has that, which creates this like beautiful, perfect Storm, why is she near alcohol and sitting by a record player? Like, it's horrible. But yeah, I think that was really interesting in that sense. But yeah, he does have a way, Alexander, of like not making any moment too big, even when you think or seemingly is supposed to be this big thing. He really knows how to tonally put it right in this interesting pocket that I think could be completely transparent. Most directors would be like, no, go for it. Be on the floor, crawl, roll over. We love that. And he was like, no. Which is great. I think I really think it's a hard balance to toe that line. And I think he was great and super instrumental in it from start to finish. With all of our characters could have very easily been very over the top or very one-dimensional, and you would have just been watching like a Greek tragedy for 2 hours.
No, he's a master of restraint.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I think specifically, Paul, with this character, he could have been one note, just sort of this unlikable professor, but I want to give you some credit for the way you're able to bring us both someone we end up caring about and feeling.
I suppose, but I'm gonna have to say I think it's the script. I really do. I do. It's like it's a it really is. I mean, it's not there was a way in which he's meant to appear at first like he's gonna be one note. Like you're gonna be like, oh, this fucking guy, and it's like, but it was in the script. It was such he writes these meticulous scripts, and David wrote a meticulous script. And then it's a really good, my job is to just stay out of the way and not screw it up. To just go with what he's showing you there. And it was for me to screw it up because it's like, it's so clear to me when I read it, where we're supposed to go.
I still want to give you more credit.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's quite a high bar. I'm sure people are wondering what's next for you.
He better go to college.
Yeah.
Sure, stay in school.
Yeah, I definitely want to finish school. I mean, no, like, I'm not really in any rush, I guess, to do another movie or something like this anytime. I mean, like, if something...
He's come along a lot of time.
Right, yeah. But I mean, no, as far as acting, I really would love to get on stage. I'd love to do something on stage sometime soon. Get back to the basics of the fundamentals, I guess, a little bit. Exercise some of the things I've been learning in school. But yeah, I'm enjoying this right now, trying to be present and take all of this in and learn what I can from it all for now.
Speaking of learning, we'll wrap up, but I'm curious if any of you have any specific examples of something you learned from each other in this movie that have kind of stuck with you.
Is that bad? No, we haven't.
We definitely learned things.
Yes. I did.
What'd you learn?
See, I know I put you on the spot. Okay, so from Dominic, I learned, that's right. But no, from Dominic, I learned, it re-engaged in me a sense of freedom,
That's actually
newness. He was fearless.
Yeah.
He is fearless. I know I could not have done this if I was in his situation at this age, and no. And so I definitely learned a sense of ferocity and ferociousness. He just tackled, it's like he blindly went into the line of fire, and it worked so beautifully. So I say I would have that from him. From Paul.
Oh no.
No, from Paul, I think it's a sense of, and I'm very fortunate to work with certain people, and it's something that they have in common. He's very special, I'll say this, but something that they have in common is no matter how long they've been in the game, the special ones act like it's their first day on the job. And that's something that Steve Martin, Martin Short act like children, and I'm like, I'm tired, and they're like, what should we do today? okay. Do you know what I mean? And that it changed my life. And Paul very much so this tenacity, it never gets old for him. And he really, really loves it. There is no ego. He is a true leader. He is so kind. And the way he tackles his craft is making him feel uncomfortable, and I'm enjoying it. The way he tackles his craft is I mean, it's a masterclass within itself, and yet still has time for everyone else in the room to check in on you, to see how you're doing, what do you need. So I think if ever I get the blessed opportunity to be a lead, he definitely is a huge marker for me of how it truly, in a very classy way, should be done. Yes, it works.
No, but I was going to say, actually, that fearless thing, and you're talking about him, throwing yourself on the fucking floor and doing all that stuff was astonishing. You had unbelievable guts, and constantly, and it was so insane. And your ability, your flexibility, I was like, I can't be so open to going with all these polarities constantly inventive, like so chill and just like taking it all in, fucking amazing. And then the balls to like do the stuff you were doing. I don't have it. It's amazing. I was almost gonna say, the thing I got from him was, I was like, there was a kind of thoughtful advocacy sometimes for your character in this way. That I was like, you would sometimes kind of go, I don't know if that makes sense. And you were so thoughtful about it. And I was like, I've been doing this a long time. And I'm like a trick dog in some ways. I'm just like, well, you want me to go? What do you want me to do? And I'm like, I can do that. I'll do this thing. And then, okay, you want me to do something else? I'll do something else. And I just like, and I would stop all of a sudden up against this guy who was like, no, maybe we think, and I'm like, fucking hell, man, you're right. Actually,
I think, well,
but that's huge, and that's not something, man. I
don't think that's something to be taught.
And it's not. You already had a level of professionalism that was, like her. That was like, wow. But there was a kind of thoughtfulness that I've forgotten about in a lot of ways. I don't let myself do it because I'm like, hey, I gotta get it done. I gotta get it all. You know what I mean? And that's like, but you know what I mean? There was something so thoughtful that was really awesome to be around.
Yeah, I think, well, that's my compliment. Dave, I mean, if you notice, for me, any sort of advocacy for my character, well, you and Alexander are a special case, but like, Divine was our first time working with Alexander as well. So I was kind of looking to her to figure out how does she, figure out a language with this guy and how to communicate with him. And her, like we're saying, like throwing yourself on the ground, it's like by the end of it, I had the confidence to do like cartwheels and stuff, you know what I mean? So it's like all of that.
That's right.
It's awesome. That's a direct, result of working with Divine. And Paul, I think, you
Put it on tape, make him cry.
I think the simplest thing was just the ability to let things go, and that was a really big challenge for me. It's like, you finish doing these things, and it's all kind of high intensity a little bit, and you walk out of it, and then you're thinking, well, maybe I could have tried it that way, or was that really the right choice? And I would talk to you about those things, and you would just be like, it's fine, it's right, because that's what happened when you were doing it,
Can't do it wrong.
Exactly. So, I mean, you really allowed me to trust myself, which was huge.